Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I am Vadim Perlovsky, and today I'm excited to welcome someone who's become a good friend of mine, Mike Birkenheier. Mike.
Birkenheier, good. Yeah, Mike. That's the easiest.
Mike Birkenheier. He is the West Coast brand ambassador, or what is your new title?
We're brand ambassador works. We're called single malt specialists. That's kind of the role that we have around the whole entire world. So there's single malt specialists here in Taiwan, Australia. So that's what we're going with right now.
Fantastic. So Mike represents the wonderful luxury brand of Dalmore whiskey. And so today we are excited. We had Mike on last year to talk about the sister distillery of Jura. And now we're here to feature the one that everyone knows, Dalmore. So everyone has 7 samples in front of them. We're excited to get into these. We're going from everything from the beginning to almost the top. But extensive tasting tonight. As always, get nerdy, ask questions, enjoy, participate. All that said, Mike, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me again, Vadim. This is great. I was joking with him when I got on that I've seen him face to face now a couple times, and the majority of those times, it just so happens to be the same T-shirt every time. It's this old Mellow Corn T-shirt that I have. So I made sure when I was packing for my trip to Seattle, which I'm in right now, I was packing light, and I was like, well, I have to bring the Mellow Corn T-shirt up. So big shout out to Mellow Corn, one of my favorite single malts. Or one of my favorite whiskeys I ever had in my entire life. I'm from the Illinois-Wisconsin border, so I will drink corn whiskey as much as I possibly can all day. Yeah, everybody, my name is Mike Birkenheier. I'm based in Los Angeles. I'm the single malt specialist officially for California right now. However, I am away from my home market in sunny and warm Seattle, Washington. I was stopped every day today because I was wearing 2 coats and a hat. And everybody consistently told me how weak and soft Los Angeles was, and that I should probably get back in my Prius and drive home. And to that, I say, thank you, Tacoma. Can't wait to come back up and visit you guys again next month. But I'm really happy to be here. These are really fun. It's fun to get to do this. The last one with Jura was really fun because Jura definitely has a fun story, based in the island, based with all of the myths that go around the island. However, here we are talking about our Halo brand, right? The aspirational brand that we have. The as my coworker and fearless leader Craig Bridger likes to refer to it as the pride of the fleet. We are now talking about the Dalmore Highland single malt whiskey. I saw a quick chat pop up. I'm sorry I can't read them all because I didn't bring my glasses and I'm getting more blind as the day goes on. But if anybody has not had the Dalmore, I think what we are set up for today is kind of an experience of the love affair between Jerez and Scotland. The Scots have been drinking sherry for as long as the Iberian Peninsula was aware of the Isles and vice versa. When you go to Scotland, they are still drinking sherry, dessert wines, port, Madeira, Marsala in large quantities. And thank God that they do that, because if they're not drinking the sherry, as Americans were not drinking sherry, there would be no casks available for anyone in the world, and sherry would pretty much collapse. Because as Americans, we're definitely not, keeping up with our dessert wine. I do believe that the lineup today is going to be the Dalmore 12, the 14-year-old, or Portwood, 15, Cigar Malt, King Alexander III, and Dalmore 18.
Is that the order you want to go in?
We're actually going to do a little bit different order, but I'll get to that in a moment on which one I think we should try first, because I want to try and change things up today. But if I could describe what the Dalmore does in the easiest way possible, it's called, it's really just our love affair of finding the world's finest casks. It's spending a significant amount of time locating these great wineries, sherry bodegas, and port houses, sourcing these very rare casks of them, a lot of them exclusive to the distillery, and some of these wines extremely old, bringing them back to the distillery wet, so a significant amount still left in them, pouring that wine out, and then finishing our whiskey in these casks. Some some really easy ways to think about the Dalmore. Every single thing that we'll be trying today started its life journey in the aging profile in ex-bourbon. So ex-bourbon always gives us a great foundation. That's where we're going to try and get our backbone, as we call it. You know, the warm baking spice flavors that you get, you know, the spice cabinet flavors that you'll get from a bourbon cask. Seldom will you see a Dalmore that goes directly into a wine cask. If you do, it's going to be a one-off or a private client or a one-off cask that you might be lucky enough if you do ever go visit the distillery, which still isn't open yet for our visitors. But again, we love our wines, and the way that we show that wine love again is by sourcing these casks. Our sherry, I would say, is what we're best known for, is our sherry secondary maturation. And for that, we exclusively use Gonzalez Baez in the sherry triangle, arguably the greatest sherry bodega in the world. And for over 100 years, we've partnered with them. So that gives us exclusive access to one of their most highly sought after sherries, which is the Methuselah Oloroso sherry, which is a 30-year-old sherry. So pardon me if I'm rehearsing or going over some knowledge everybody knows here, but sherry is basically a Spanish fortified wine that is grown in a very specific part of southern Spain, a dessert wine. No sugar added though. So this is not a wine like port where they can add sugar to sweeten it. Sherry is simply aged by taking a type of sherry grape called the Pedro Jimenez or PX grape, laying these grapes out in the sun until they turn into raisins, pressing these raisins and using the juice of these pressed raisins to sweeten the wine at 25%. So adding 25% of the PX juice creates what is called a cream sherry or an Oloroso sherry, generally considered the sweetest that sherry can be, but more on that in an expression or two as well. The DNA of the Dalmore, as we're going through tonight, some far more easily to detect than others. The DNA is always a chocolate orange. We get that because of our distillate. Our distillation process is unique to us. We are known as having flat top stills at a pure right angle on the top of our stills. Legend has it that somebody wasn't good at measuring either our ceiling height in our still house, or somebody wasn't good at measuring the actual height of the ceiling or the stills. So they came in. Regardless of what happened, it's kind of a unique mistake. So instead of having the swan neck, as everybody's seen before, this right angle kind of really forces a lot more reflux. So we even took it one step further. We did copper water, cooled water jackets at the top of our stills as well, right underneath our right angle top stills, which adds more condensing of these vapors, adding more reflux to it, meaning that it's falling back down into the still, continuously going back and forth. And what comes out is a chunky, very rich, extremely fruity distillate. And we want it that way. We want to have a very big new make whiskey, because with the Dalmore, we really believe that 12 years is the minimum time it takes in the maturation process for you to really start seeing what we talk about with the chocolate orange. We've released a 68 year before. I know, I can probably say, because I know a guy that works at the Dalmore, there is some whiskey significantly older than 68 years sitting there just waiting for the perfect time to be released. But we'll probably have to wait to that to start setting some records later on. I think the way that we should start tonight is by starting with something that most people want to finish with, and I think that should be with the King Alexander III. Now, why do I think that we should start with the King Alexander III? Well, in the rest of my whiskeys, I think you're going to find that we aren't very interested at being subtle. we really want to make single malts that are very present in the conversation. Definitely very bold and big, full of personality. And the Dalmore King Alexander III is that as well. However, of all of the single malts that we're trying today, this one is also surprisingly delicate and complex and floral. And I feel like being one of my favorite single malts that we have in the portfolio tonight, I want to make sure that palate fatigue doesn't have any effect on what we're trying. So the King is going to be our first one. Now, as everybody looks at my bottle here, and everybody who is aware of the Royal Stag and the name King Alexander, these are not just a name and a symbol that we came up with. We'll start with the stag. If you see me in person, if you see anybody who works for my company in person, obviously if you see my bottles, you'll see this big, a lot of people call it a deer, but you'll see this stag with the 12 points on it. And that, everybody, is the royal symbol of the family of Scotland. King Alexander III in particular used that as his royal symbol. Now, why would we make a single malt named King Alexander III, and why do we use the royal symbol of the family of Scotland on our King Alexander III? Well, our royal heritage is the reason for that. And our royal heritage dates back to 1263. In 1263, King Alexander III was the first king of the Scots to kick the Vikings out of Scotland. Up until then, especially way up north, there was, they called it a scourge of Viking rule. And King Alexander gathered the armies, went up, expelled them, and decided to celebrate. And the way a king celebrated in the late 1200s was by going on a royal hunt. And on this royal hunt, there was only one thing the king would hunt, and those are these giant red stag, which are all over the Scotland. And the royal stag itself is a 12 point. So these are 2,000-pound animals with no natural predators in Scotland at that time, except for kings. So King Alexander, being a far better warlord and king than he was a huntsman, came across a royal stag and was charged by the stag falling from his horse and nearly killed. But luckily for him, he had the Mackenzie clan with him, and the Mackenzie clan, the chief of the clan, Mackenzie, saved King Alexander III. And for this, the king gave the Mackenzie clan the use of the royal emblem of Scotland and the name Saviors of the King. Now, all of this sounds like a really long story for me to tell you that a few generations after that, the Mackenzie clan purchased and operated the Dalmore. And since then, we've had the Royal Stag of Scotland as our symbol on every whiskey that we produce. And because of that gentleman, King Alexander III, we decided to make a whiskey that kind of would be a show off of what we mean when we say that we are the experts in multi-stage maturation. So the Dalmore King Alexander III starts its life, obviously, in ex-bourbon casks, and then is split into 6 separate portions and aged separately, each one. Portion goes into 30-year-old Methuselah Oloroso sherry. A portion goes into Graham's 10-year tawny port, which is another exclusive pipe that we get. You know, they call their casks pipes in port world. Another portion is Madeira, Marsala, Chateau Marbouzet, Left Bank Grand Cru Cabernet Sauvignon. A portion goes into a small batch bourbon, and then all of it is brought back together and bottled. Now, why the King Alexander III? Why is it like that? If everybody isn't quite aware who our now retiring master blender is, Sir Richard Patterson. Richard is a wine enthusiast, and he has really been driving our theory that if we source better wine casks, we'll make better whiskey. So the nose on the King Alexander, I would say orange peel is evident, as some essence of orange will be there for everyone that we're trying tonight. But what I really want to focus on, and I think that comes out really well in the King Alexander, is our tertiary flavors. something that we don't really discuss much because it's mostly about the wine is those third level flavors, which are going to come from that super fruity, um, super kind of almost floral new make spirit. And this is where some jasmine comes from, some rose petal, and some rose water. That is very evident to me on the nose. '80 proof. We like to say that we are making a single malt that is ready to be enjoyed immediately after opening the bottle. No water needed. And on the palate, obviously, I'm not telling anybody to taste anything. These are all suggestions. You're also talking to somebody who's been socked in the nose 20 times in my life. So my palate is rough, and I've also smoked cigarettes, which I just recently quit, which is it's not cool. It's not cool to quit cigarettes, but I've quit smoking. So again, my palate's different than everybody, but I get aged balsamic in the King Alexander, rose water and rose petals. That is the big flavors I get from the King. It is, Mike G. It is good to be the King. The King is it's not at the top of our like what we call our principal collection. So from 12 year up to pretty much 21 years, we call kind of our principal collection, and we can actually sneak our 21 year into our rare whiskey. We've always kind of had this idea that the King Alexander was going to float somewhere near the older of our principal collection, but definitely not necessarily going to be the height of it. So right now, where would I say this falls in? I would say if I was going to place this in where we think as a company it should lie, somewhere between the Cigar Malt Reserve and the Dalmore 18. But again, because of those delicate notes, those slightly delicate notes in there, I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to really enjoy this first. Richard's a big fan of making sure that instead of the 12-year first, make sure they get the King. Let's show them what we do best, and then let's talk about what we do really well after that. So let's go, Vadim. What do you think of the King Alexander?
Fantastic. The problem with this one is it's too easy to drink. I recently poured a sample for someone who doesn't drink whiskey. Definitely doesn't drink whiskey neat. A girl who says she prefers Moscato, and she was drinking this like it was water. I was like, calm down. That's a $300 bottle. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Too easy.
It's a budget destroyer. So in my job, I control sales of our rare whiskey allocations. So our 30-year, our 40-year, our 45-year, and we do release a 30, a 40, and a 45 every year. But it is to do a lot of entertaining, and I can always tell how much my credit card is going to wince in pain when I see the King Alexander come out, because I'm like, oh, that bottle's going away. There's three of us, and we're at a whiskey bar right now. That poor bottle has no hope of making it back on that shelf for the rest of the night. And then I get calls from our New York office explaining that I can either give up my car allowance for the next month, or I can stop taking people out to drink Dalmore King Alexander 3 or 4 nights a week. And I mean, I live in LA. Who needs a car anyways? So yeah, I really wanted to start off with the King, and I hope everybody really liked it. Please, anybody feel free to sit there and tell me if I've said anything against what you think you found in it, right? Because I, as an ambassador, as someone who works for a whiskey company, and everybody who comes back on here is in a bubble, right? We pretty much drink what we sell, we drink what we talk about, we drink who employs us, we talk about that, and we tend to all believe that we're a little more popular than we might be. So I like doing whiskey societies, whether virtual or in person, because this gives me an opportunity to learn something new. If I do all the talking all the time, it's going to be the same 6 things said about the same 6 whiskeys, and it'll never grow. And I was kind of confronted in a very interesting way a few nights ago when everyone just told me, like, listen, man, you're the waxy almond. You're the waxy walnut or waxy almond whiskey. That's just what you are. And I was like, you know what? I've never said that before. And yes, my 15 cigar malt, 18 in King Alexander, along with some other single malts, right? It's not an odd thing to find those older single malts that all turn into waxy walnuts. But I would never have said that unless somebody said that to me not too long ago. Does anybody have anything that they really are finding opposite of what I say, or something that they really like to talk about when it comes to the King?
The question I have with it, and this could just be, I think I find so much with whiskey, just sort of you're experiencing where you are, and I happen to be right now in Connecticut, and it's 30 degrees, and I'm drinking this. But one thing that's interesting is with, and part of this is that my wife's really into port right now, so we're having a lot after dinner. Is this intended with all of the dessert wine notes to be a dessert drink? I mean, question the, the versatility. I mean, obviously, not all of us. I do, but 102 degrees in Palm Springs in June. You're limited into what whiskeys you get, and so this probably isn't it. But just wondering, is the idea here? No, you should be able to do this before, during, or after dinner, or is this really meant for sort of the end of the night? Hey, this is a rare, great thing, and so this is because a lot of times I think, being a bourbon guy, when I think of a fine Scotch, I do want like a fucking give me cold and a leather chair and a cigar and fire, and this hits that totally 100%. But I'm just wondering, is the intent just fastball right down the middle? This is what you intend, or is it trying to be more diverse? And maybe I'm just not experiencing it because of where I am in the world in my life right now, or just wondering about that.
Yeah, great question. So the Dalmore is undeniably categorized, I think, in general. I mean, so if you talk to the people at the distillery, this is pre-tea for breakfast, post. I mean, they're going to drink it whenever they want. However, in the States, I think that we are definitely put into the dessert, after dinner, cigar, chocolate tart. And the way that I think that changes is in a few that we go to is I've been drinking tons of highballs lately, a fantastic soda water. I love them all. Q, Fever Tree, and using an orange peel as the expression instead of a grapefruit or a lemon or a lime because of the chocolate orange. And that's a really great way to take something that is, all I want to do is drink 3 of these after dinner and go to bed, or sit on my balcony, or sit around a fire pit, to, hey, before I have dinner tonight, I'm going to have a Dalmore 15 and soda water with a little bit, with an orange squeeze on it. And it's really going to, change the way I look at it. But you're not wrong in the slightest to say that the Dalmore is always considered the after dinner single malt. Yeah.
Which I'm not hating on, to be very clear. And I've had it before. No. I'm just, making, like I said, I could just be with where I am literally, physically, and mentally in the world right now, or am I, over experiencing? So thank you.
No, you're 100% right. And a lot of that comes from the fact that the sherry that we use predominantly is a minimum 30-year-old sherry. So a 30-year-old Oloroso sherry, the Gonzalez Baez Methuselam, that is about as dark as night. It's about as rich as it gets. It's about as sticky and decadent of a dessert wine that you can get, in a way that a tawny port really struggles. Even a 30-year-old port is having a hard time getting that viscosity that a 30-year-old sherry gets to. And that's, that goes really well. I think you put the pin in us really easy. So that's the King. If anybody at any time, I'm not above being interrupted by questions, comments, anything you want. So please do it whenever you can.
Mike, I came in a little late. Is this the first tasting, or did I miss one?
This is the first one. This is the King Alexander III.
All right. So I have a bone to pick with you. You shouldn't start with the $250 bottle. You got to start with the cheap bottles. Because now I'm going to go back. I'm going to think, oh, that first one was great. That's got to be the cheap one. But no.
Well, so I know you came a little late, but the reason that I'm doing that is I think that the King is delicate and floral in a way that a lot of the other single malts that we're going to be trying tonight, and especially the ones that I kind of picked, especially starting with the third one we'll try tonight. These are some big present single malts that are going to really do a doozy on everybody's palate. And if I can be honest, I drink alcohol for a living, and the way I talk about it as we go through the night, I love the King Alexander. But when I bring a couple friends back to my house in Los Angeles, and maybe we've had a couple wines, maybe we've had a couple whiskeys, maybe there's a bottle of champagne, we're not drinking King Alexander, and it's not because of the price. It's because I feel like it would be lost after a few whiskeys and bottles of wine. So I really wanted everybody to make sure that they got a really good idea of what, when we stretch our legs, we're able to do. But by the way, also, we'll actually be finishing tonight with the $400 bottle of 18, because our 18 just took a beautiful price increase. I'm here to give you guys all of that fantastic news. I'm happy that I didn't tell you which hotel I'm staying at, because I don't need anybody to throw eggs at my hotel tonight. I'm staying at the Waldorf. I'm just kidding. I'm staying at the W. Please don't throw eggs. So let's go into our next expression, which really kind of starts getting into the DNA, the house style, and this is going to be the Dalmore 12. This is the friendly introduction into, if I could say there's 3 whiskeys in our portfolio and I could get rid of the rest of them just to tell somebody, if Martians came down tomorrow and said, what do you guys do to justify being on this earth tomorrow, I would put a 12, a 15, and 18 in front of them and say, of all the other things we do, this is what we are most known for. And to start back with this 12, the aging profile on the 12 is 9 years in ex-bourbon. 50% is removed from the bourbon casks and re-racked into 30-year-old Methuselah Oloroso sherry casks. Brought back together, bottled, and then, what is it to me on the nose? This is where the chocolate orange really starts, right? The 12 is the Tetley's chocolate covered orange, a Tetley's orange tea with a little cacao. It is soft milk chocolate and orange blossoms. I love the 12, and I think that the 12 suits itself very well for, as we were talking about earlier, a highball. So the 12 on the nose to me is that soft milk chocolate with a little bit of, I don't want to say the fruit of orange, but definitely orange blossom. And then what you'll hear me say multiple times tonight is stewed dates, stewed figs, stewed raisins. Because of our 30-year-old sherries, I just think of like a saucepan with an extra rich simple syrup, some raisins soaked overnight, and turned on a very low simmer and slowly stirring. And you're going to get kind of the nose and kind of the palate of our 12, especially inside of our house style, our 15 or 18, but it definitely in the 12 has those stewed raisins. If anybody on here finds themselves in Beverly Hills or Santa Monica, California, or Las Vegas, Nevada, and they visit Resorts World, which is one of our favorite hotels, and we go to Wally's. Wally's is a very, very great supporter of ours, liquor store and dining establishment. We currently have a Dalmore 12-year old-fashioned on the list with them. And with that old-fashioned comes a great partnership that we have. There's a chocolatier in Chicago named Vosges Haute Chocolat. The owner is an amazing chocolatier, and she's making a series of truffles that are made with our whiskey. So we have a 12-year truffle, a 15-year truffle, a cigar malt truffle, an 18-year-old truffle, and we have about 150 45-year-old truffles. However, those aren't for sale. You'll have to buy a Dalmore 45 from me in order to try those, but trust me, they're fantastic. But this old-fashioned, it's beautiful. It has a little candied orange on top. It's made with a high level of milk chocolate, low level cacao, and just having that cocktail with some chocolate mole bitters, and then having a bite off that truffle. That's exactly to what I think of as what the Dalmore 12 is right now. Again, I understand I'm very lucky to have the job I have, and that I also have no concept of what anything inside my category costs because of a corporate card. But to me, the 12-year right now is an old fashioned or it's a highball. And that's where I envision the 12-year all the time. Would somebody like to tell me what they're finding in the Dalmore 12? Chocolate covered cherry.
I agree with you on
Yeah.
the citrus notes. It definitely comes through more, which makes it a little more versatile. I'm not saying better, but more versatile than the king. And I see what you're saying with a definitely highball, but fantastic, either with an orange or a lemon, and an old fashioned for days, without a doubt. We'll just go in there.
And I feel like, the 12, and again, I understand chaos is ensuing in the single malt whiskey pricing category right now, right? And we are definitely part of the problem as well. Having said that, the 12 is a perfect treat old fashioned, right? It's a great night. You had a great night out. Let's have one of these, maybe make one at home. You're probably not going to regret it unless you get to the third or fourth one. Then you're going to feel the way I do every morning after I wake up in Vegas for the first time that I visit. So cheers, everybody, to the Dalmore 12.
I'm getting a lot more floral perfume on the nose on this one than I did in the King Alexander.
Interesting. Really? Do you think it's going to be, is it more of a tropical flower, or is it more tropical fruit, or just perfume? In what way?
Just, I guess, fresh flowers.
Okay.
And again, to your point, I just spent 4 days in Vegas, so my palate could be way off.
All that pumped in oxygen that you're getting in your hotel and your casino floor.
More like people smoking cigarettes nonstop everywhere.
Man, those were the days.
Actually, I agree with what Vadim is saying. I feel like it's more floral on the nose as well. And with the King Alexander, it smelled like port, on the nose to me. It didn't have some of the nose that you were describing.
Okay, interesting. Cool.
And when I initially tasted the King, it was port forward. But after a few more sips, I sort of tasted all the different dessert wines in there, the different barrels. But this one more floral.
More floral?
On the nose.
Well, I think it's about the intensity. The 12 has more intensity, but there's more subtlety in the King Alexander.
Oh yeah, the King Alexander was definitely complex and subtle in so many different ways.
More development even on the nose.
I think that the floral or the perfume notes that we're talking in the 12 go back to those tertiary flavors that we get with the Dalmore. And to me, I would say the reason with that is after only 9 years in ex-bourbon and 50% going into Methuselah 30-year-old Oloroso sherry casks, it's going to have that those background flavors aren't going to be pushed as far back as they would say after 14 years in ex-bourbon and 4 years in a first filled 30-year-old sherry cask, which we'll get to later. So does everybody, obviously I think we're hearing that it's kind of split. Some people like the King more. Does anybody like the 12 more than the King? Because well then, sir, next time I'm getting a clam pie, I'll take you out because you're my type of person to take out. We will drink as much 12-year-old as you want.
It's just got a little more depth to it. I'm surprised. Yeah, I really like it.
Cool.
The King Alexander was nice and smooth and easy, and but if I'm spending the money, I'd get a 12 so far. I mean, I've got cigar malt and I love the cigar malt, but yeah. That's why I did this tasting. I don't have all these bottles, so it's great.
I love to hear that, right? I mean, I think that's a huge compliment to the whiskey makers, right? That's a huge compliment to the people in Scotland making this, that for so long the King was that aspirational bottle, and then we have somebody who's knowledgeable saying that they really like the 12. Well, that's huge, right? I don't think that would be looked down upon by anybody in my company.
I like them for different reasons. The King Alexander, there's a complexity there, all those different casts that I'm picking up, and the smoothness of it, where the 12 is a little bit more kind of one or two notes. I mean, the orange and the floral is more present. I feel like the floral is like that tertiary, It's like I'm eating an orange and walking through a perfume shop just a little bit. That would be my explanation of it. But yeah, the King Alexander, there's just so much going on that I like it for that reason.
Hey, good, right? Again, I would be really worried, and we run the risk of this, and we've talked about this as teams before. When I say that we should start with the king, everyone goes, well, what happens if nobody likes anything after that you pour? And I go, well, then I go back to working for Hennessy, which was my previous job, because I belong back in cognac. However, if I roll it and people are actually enjoying what they're drinking after drinking the king, then I feel like our portfolio is standing up.
But that's palate. I mean, everyone's different. And I went from peated scotch to bourbon for a long time. And now I'm kind of dabbling back in scotch. And so I go for those more powerful flavors. And the mellow stuff, I kind of go, oh, it's nice, but I want something with a little more punch.
Yeah, cool. And that's why you like the cigar malt, which we'll get to in a little bit. Like the cigar malt is that palate that's our biggest whiskey. That, or maybe one we're going to do in about 2. But I think the next one is something that I think is special because it hasn't been out very long. So we're going to go to the Dalmore 14 next. The 14 is a very interesting single malt for us because it has 3 firsts for the Dalmore. The first is that we've never released a 14 year before in the 180 plus years of our existence. We've also never released a US exclusive, which the Dalmore 14 is. Now, I know to never say never, but we are allegedly never releasing this outside of the continental United States and Florida and Alaska. It will not go to Canada. It will not go to Mexico. It is not going to be on travel retail. It's not going to be on a plane, no matter how much money you spend at Emirates. And the third first is that this is the first single malt whiskey we have ever finished in Pedro Jimenez casks. So we listened. A lot of people are saying that we want more sherry. We want slightly sweeter without a sugary sherry expression inside of the Dalmore. Why don't you guys skip the bourbon and go to sherry? Those are questions that get asked probably to me and all my colleagues. I wouldn't say infrequently. So what we did is we found some very beautiful Pedro Jimenez from Gonzalez Baez, and we go 12 years in next bourbon. 50% of it gets transferred to the PX casks, brought back together. Now I'll say, we'll get to the nose in a second, but when we are going on the palate, please take a prep sip of this whiskey, swallow it, and then judge me off my second. The 14-year-old takes significantly more time to open up than any of my other in my principal collection. I do think it's because of that almost syrupy consistency of these PX casks are tight, like a really tight dessert wine, and it kind of takes a little bit of your palate to move it around till you get it. But on the nose, Christmas cake. I get big Christmas cake, sugar cookie on this one, and on my palate, this is a beautiful, warm sherry hug, is the way I like to say it.
I know we're not tasting it today, and I should probably wait till the end to bring it up. But when you're done with the 14, if you could mention the 12, the sherry cask that came out last year, because you said you guys don't do anything. I thought that was exclusively sherry, or is that also finished in sherry?
So we'll get to that after the 14. I'll talk about the 12-year sherry cask select. Yeah,
Perfect. Because I can't find it anywhere. It was so damn good, and like it's impossible to find now.
Yeah. So before we get into more 14, everyone asks, do we have a hard time getting whiskey into this country? I'll say no, we don't have a problem. We actually airlift whiskey into this country. If anybody's been following the Dalmore for about 10 years, we have had an explosive amount of growth in the last 5 years. And we're not stuck on a container ship. We don't have a problem buying glass. All of these things have been thought over. We have a parent company that takes very good care of us. We airlift whiskey into the United States to try and get it here. We sell out of whiskey every year. We do not sell to other parts of the world. And when I tell people, if you really like a cigar malt, if you're not buying it before August, you're probably not going to buy it anytime after that. And then I have people look dead in my eye in late December and ask me why I'm ruining their life by not being able to sell them King Alexander or cigar malt or 18. So yeah, as far as hard to find 12-year Sherry Cask Select, I have a feeling that's only going to be more and more of the case as we go on. But for the Dalmore 14, what does everybody think of the Dalmore 14? This was released September of last year, and we can't keep it in stock anywhere. It's not a limited release. This is going to be as available, which is tough to say now with single malt, as available as every other one inside of our principal range. But Vadim, I haven't really seen you try this. What do you think with the 14-year?
Oh, it's stupid good. It's so good. It's ridiculous.
14 special. Yeah, this is we're notorious in the whiskey world as being conservative in what we do, right? We stick to what we know and we do it. And if you want to change the Dalmore, you have a better chance of turning an aircraft carrier in, the Colorado River. However, we listened and we thought, all right, the 14 is relatively fast growing. It's not owned by anybody, so it's not like we're trying to follow anybody. I know that Belvini makes a fantastic 14, but if people want sherry, we think that 14 years we can really push up the PX sherry on this, and that's kind of what we did. Anybody else?
Say, we don't. Sure. I know that Dalmore bringing up the alcohol by volume on the bottle is kind of a sore subject for a lot of whiskey connoisseurs, but I do feel like the extra 3% you guys added to this gives it more character. I'm really enjoying it.
Well, okay, so that'll bring us into our 12-year Sherry Cask Select conversation as well. So Sir Richard Patterson is retiring after 58 years uninterrupted. He likes to say 100 days a year at the distillery. However, if Richard wants to come in and take over the distillery and become the California single malt specialist, no one stops him from doing what he's doing. He shows up, he's in a 3-piece suit with cufflinks the size of my forehead. He can do what he wants. He was the artist that kind of brought us into the light. As he's retiring now, Greg Glass is taking over. And Greg came from about 5 or 6 years ago, came from Compass Box. And Greg is younger. Greg, being probably 40 years younger than Richard, listens to the streets a little bit more, right? You're probably a little less insulated when you're not in your late 70s and you're in your late 30s, early 40s walking around. And he has had his hands on 3 of our single malts that we have right now that are readily available. The 14-year, which you just had, the 12-year Sherry Cask Select, which I'm touching on right now, and the 21, which is my personal favorite of everything we make, but the 12-year Sherry Cask Select. Is it a cynical way to sell more 12-year-old whiskey? I get. And I say, no, it's not. It starts its life off the same way our original 12-year does as 9 years in ex-bourbon, whereas 50% of our original 12-year goes into the 30-year-old Sherry Cask, the Methuselah. We went to Gonzalez Baez and we asked for a bespoke 30-year-old sherry from Gonzalez Baez that we could use, that they're not using for anything else, and they gave it to us. And our 12-year Sherry Cask Select is 100% finished in this bespoke sherry. What we say about the original 12 is soft, right? Soft milk chocolate. The 12-year Sherry Cask Select, slightly higher in proof, a lot more sherry influence. Some people say twice the sherry influence. It gets a little worrisome when you say twice the sherry influence. Technically, all of it's finished in sherry cask, whereas 50% of the original 12. So technically, you can say twice the sherry influence, but that's going to lead to something to think that all this thing is a sherry, and it's not. I suggest if anyone can find it, a lot of independent have it. Total Wine has loved it and supported it for a long time. Black pepper and bright, vibrant sherry is the way I'll describe our 12-year Sherry Cask Select. But I digress, and let's come back to our 14. What does everybody think of the 14? And not everybody at once, but is there anybody who is surprised by it? Is there anybody who thinks that this is inside of our portfolio and what we're doing? Is this kind of chugging along, following the rules that the Dalmore set forth for itself?
I would echo what Vadim was just talking about proof, and I hate to be a proofist, but I do like my cast strength stuff, whether it be bourbon or whatever. And so I feel like there is some of that. But what I like about this one specifically is I'm not getting as much of the orange. I'm getting more like you said, that sweeter, that cake notes, that kind of thing, like almost like fruit cake.
Fruitcake, Christmas cake,
Yeah.
sultanas, a lot of the old. So my brother-in-law's Welsh. This is probably what Christmas morning smelled and tastes like in his small Welsh home with his, rugby playing, baritone singing family. So I really dig the 14, and to me, it tastes very British. This is a very British single malt, a very British warm baking spice candied cake single malt, and I do love the 14. But I would be amiss if I didn't say that the next one will show off something completely different. We are not only a sherry house, we also, I've said before, source exclusively 10-year tawny port pipes from Graham's and 30-year tawny port pipes from Graham's. We make 2 single malts that do not touch sherry whatsoever. The port, which is next for us, the portwood, and our 30-year. But this portwood, if I was going to make a statement for the newspaper, I would say it's a non-age statement. Just between us friends right here, definitely not being recorded and not for public consumption. We're looking at probably about a 12-year finish, right? This is probably total aging. We're looking at the 12, sometimes up to 13, but without releasing 3 12 years, we're going to keep it at where it is right now. So finished in these 100% finished in these Graham's 10-year port pipes. Very different. Definitely not the stewed date fig raisin that we get a lot from the 30-year-old sherries that we use. To me, this one and the finish, especially on the palate, is the plum that you wish you didn't eat with a white shirt on. Right? It's going to run down your cheek. It's so ripe. It's going to ruin that shirt. And you're probably going to want to grab another really dark, beautiful plum after this. The nose too has a little more heat to it, as it is one of our higher proof single malts. Unfortunately, I do not have a bottle of that in front of me because I could not find one at the distributor in all of Washington state. And I wasn't going to fly up. I should have flown up with a bottle. However, I only carried a carry-on bag this time for my short trip. So I don't want to be renditioned inside of a TSA holding cell outside Burbank Airport. So I decided not to try and sneak on a 750 of single malt whiskey this time. I'll get you guys next time though. But what is everybody finding with the port? Because this is before I get any remarks on it, I'll say that people with very developed palates enjoy this one the most and didn't know they were going to enjoy it the most when we bring it out. As a company, I should do better at promoting the portwood, but we get so lost with our sherry and so much in love with Jerez and Gonzalez Baez that we forget to talk about how great of a winery Graham's is, how great that their port is. It's a big house, yeah, and they're smaller port houses, but as far as consistency goes, Graham's 10-year tawny is beautiful, and those pipes really lend to a fantastic single malt. What does everyone think?
It's got a more intense mouthfeel. It's thicker, more substantial, and actually has a finish compared to the others.
Okay, sure. So the other have no finish to you?
No finish to me.
Awesome. Well, love it. Cool. But the port has a finish. Well, great.
Well, more than the others.
Awesome.
At least to me, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I
it's-
love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a lingering finish. I would say that that doesn't that kind of shines a bit more than all the previous ones.
Cool. Yeah, I mean the Portwood is our bigger whiskey. It's definitely not the biggest that we have, but this is definitely a bigger single malt that's really going to stand up. I think this sometimes can use a touch of water, right? A little touch of water in this Portwood. You're not going to really lose much with it as it has a little bit higher proof. And the Tawny Port is probably always considered a bigger flavor profile than a 30-year-old sherry, as the sherry goes into different drier flavors sometimes. The port is that typical dessert wine flavor profile most people are looking for.
Interesting. I felt like the 14 was sweeter to me than the port would.
Okay.
The Portwood seems more adult and like more grown up. I do remember last time when we did this tasting with Jenny a couple of years ago, the Portwood was a crowd pleaser. Everybody loved it.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I'd say Portwood and 12-year sherry cask select are always really big with people who have well-developed whiskey palates. It's usually always the 12-year sherry cask select and Portwood that people are like, that's what I would probably drink the most at home.
Getting a lot of spicier notes to it than any of the others. Almost like a rye.
Yeah, a little bit higher proof sometimes comes off as spice, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll find that a lot with a lot of, like you said, rye whiskeys. A lot of 80-year-old rye whiskey or 80 proof rye whiskeys are fantastic whiskeys, but sometimes you're getting up to like a 90 or 100 proof. You're like, ooh, it does have a rice spice. But I'll also say if you proof that down to 80, the rice spice kind of goes away, because sometimes that proof will play a trick on my tongue and tell me spice when it's just a little bit of proof. So love that.
This is really playing with my palate, so I may have to do a little illegal comparison here to the Balvenie port. So
yeah, please do,
because this is
Love
one of my
Balvenie.
favorites, and this one's kicking it. It's really good.
Cool. Anytime to me, I think that being held in the same regards or even mentioned the same regards as Balvenie is always a compliment, right? Like, absolutely love what they're doing. I think they've historically have been always made really fantastic juice, and they take a lot of time. William Grant takes a lot of time and effort in keeping that brand solid. So it's a big compliment.
Yeah, this is the only Dalmore I've ever had prior to tonight, because I went on a big Portwood kick and I started putting together a whole bunch of ports, and I'm going to do a sit down with a couple friends of 5 different port finishes that I have and do a blind tasting. So it'll be interesting to see where this falls with 4 others. Not anything spectacular or anything that's like super rare, but like this, a bunch of other folks' standard port cask finishes, which is going to be fun, and kind of I'm looking forward to it at some point in time. This is a really good one. I love it.
What was
Cool,
that address,
yeah.
Jason?
It's gonna be a long drive.
It would be a very long drive, and you probably want to get some make sure you got a 4-wheel drive, because by the time you get out here, who knows how much snow is going to be on the ground on the highway.
Where are you located?
I'm in Minnesota.
Whereabouts? Okay,
Minnesota.
cool.
Yep.
Greatest week of my life was spent, started off in Black Duck, and then we went up to the Boundary Waters. And Black Duck, I remember going to a bar in Black Duck. It was me and about 5 or 6 gentlemen like me in our late 20s, and they weren't ready for us at this Black Duck bar. I remember that they were just like, "Hey, we're closing. Like, it's 6." They're like, "Yeah, we want you to leave. We want you guys to leave this bar in Black Duck." We're like, "Oh, okay, get it. Sorry."
6 a.m.
6 p.m. 6
Jesus.
p.m. Yeah, they wanted us to leave at 6 p.m. It was great.
I
In
don't
my
even
20s,
start drinking until 6. That's what.
we were at a cabin in Black Duck getting ready to go for a week in Boundary Waters in a canoe, and none of us brought tents. We all thought we were really cool by not bringing tents up the entire time and just sleeping outside. So we wanted to make sure that we imbibed in the local hospitality as much as we could. And we could have been there for 14 hours before that or 5 minutes before that, but they were ready to close about as soon as we started ordering rounds of shots and beers. So good for them. Man, we earned it. Let's just say that. The bartender was doing their job that night. So the next one we have it's going back from the what I said from the 12, the 15, the 18 being best representative of our house style is the Dalmore 15. The Dalmore 15 is right in the middle of what we do well. Aging 12 years in ex-bourbon, we split into 3 separate portions. One portion goes into the 30-year-old Methuselah Oloroso sherry. One portion goes into 30-year-old Apostolese sherry from Gonzalez Baez. And one portion goes into the 10-year Amoroso sherry from Gonzalez Baez and brought back together. The 15-year-old is what I think I do believe we are an extremely consistent single malt producer, but the 15 to me is the most consistently consistent single malt that we make. I can always tell this 15 is going to be fantastic from 5 years ago to 4 years ago to 3 years ago to whether I'm drinking it in Scotland or I have it in Seoul or I'm having it on a plane. The 15, I mean, obviously on a plane, I can't taste anything when you're at 30,000 feet. Having said that, this is always going to be, the 15 is always a real big crowd pleaser. A lot of expressed orange peel on the nose. The palate, this is a vanilla bomb. This one comes off as vanilla, mid-roast coffee with a little sherry nuttiness. The 15 is what I'm currently drinking the most of at home, and it goes down fast as well.
So what gives it that vanilla? Is it just more fresh ex-bourbon casks?
You know, we don't. So at 9 years in bourbon is where our whiskey starts to make its own decision on where it's going to go. Obviously, if we're not getting much more out of the whiskey, it's going to turn into a 12. But, you know, at 12 years in ex-bourbon, you're going to get big vanilla flavors out of just about anything that spends 12 years in ex-bourbon cask. But also, when they're nosing for a whiskey that will turn into 12 year, or turn into a 15, it's going to be the ones that get the most vanilla out of it. So if at 4 years they're nosing this whiskey and they're getting no vanilla out of it, it can go a bunch of different ways. It can go up to a 40 or 45. But if they're starting to sense a lot of vanilla early on, then this is probably going to get moved into the 15-year-old area. And it kind of knows what it's going to do when it grows up, right? Like it's kind of picked at a very young age. You're going to be 15-year-old young lady or young man. So go over there and rest until it's your time. But on the palate, it is that vanilla and coffee is where I get a lot. And the nose, again, like I said, is that orange peel, but goes directly into a little sherry nuttiness.
Question about the process about aging, etc. What is sort of the average or whatever cask strength you're dealing with? And when you go to finish and you're splitting them up, I assume it's going at cask strength and then proof down later, or what is that process, and is it all proof down with the same thing, or is it there different kinds of water or whatever for different proofing downs, the different finishes? What's the steps there? It's probably very basic, and I've probably heard this in one of the 3 previous Dalmore tastings I've done. I just can't think.
All of the water comes from Camerdy Firth, which is where our water source comes from. So every bit of that is filtered from our fresh water source that we get that is right in front of the distillery. And as far as how we proof down or why we proof down, we're a big proponent of, I know it might not seem that way anymore, but the heritage of the Dalmore, especially since our redesign about 7 or 8 years ago, is that we want absolutely the most amount of people in the world to be able to enjoy it. So if you're wondering why we're proofing down and how we're proofing down, our proofing down theory is I want somebody who's not big into single malt, who's not into a cask strength to be able to enjoy this, while somebody who is into a cask strength to be able to enjoy it as well, just maybe not have their preference. Now, how are we doing it? It's always going to be the fresh water from Camerdy Firth.
And sorry, more of my question was in the process. Are you proofing at the end after you recombine, or are you proofing? Okay. So
everything's good.
It's finishing at cask strength in each of the components when it's different
and then proofing before bottling. Yes.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. What does everybody think of the 15?
I think it's my favorite so far.
Interesting. I love it.
I don't know.
Dalmore cask Dalmore, I saw a comment, Dalmore cast strength. I get a lot of questions about that. And the way I put that is we do have some of those. However, we keep those for the distillery tours. We keep those for our private clients. So our private client experience is a very bespoke experience. A lot of distilleries right now, every distillery has a fantastic cask program, a fantastic, single barrel program. And we kind of keep ours in a very, very, what do I have there? I got awesome. We have Little Angels. Yeah, so we have ours as a very bespoke. So generally, let's say we pick a random 10 of us and we say, hey, let's go buy a cask. And we go fly into Scotland and take the trip up to the Northern Highlands. And there we are. They're going to taste us all the way through. So they'll sit there and be like this, hey, here is a new make spirit. Here is the wine from the cask of what you liked. Here is this whiskey at half the age of what you're doing. So they're constantly pulling whiskey and setting aside. Richard used to write in chalk on the side of the cask and then take tubes of this and stick it inside the library, because ideally when something is so unique and so special, we always know that's probably not going to be released into the general population. This is going to be something for somebody who is willing to pay for my health insurance as the single malt specialist for California, right? So to get a
Your
cask
health insurance is not that expensive.
Yeah, probably not. Right now that I quit smoking too, right, which I never did, right, life insurance salesman. But as far as cask proof, it would have to be a private client thing. Now I've tasted some very special. It didn't before I had it. I was a little shocked that they had it and that they were giving it to us, and then that I loved it. Was our 25-year-old only bourbon finished Dalmore. So it's only bourbon casks. We just kept it in the bourbon casks after we got the new make and didn't touch it for 25 years and then brought it out. And it was a really kind of a crazy thing. It's kind of crazy knowing that we're such a red wine and dessert wine finished single malt that just tasting what that bourbon tastes like, that was a fun day. Definitely not as good as the 15. I guarantee you guys, the 15 is so much better than that. Who cares about any of that stuff? But the 15, super fun, super, super enjoyable. What I'm really getting into a lot at home right now, especially because Los Angeles is going through the deep freeze of being in the 60s and 50s. So I'm really enjoying a nice warm me up with the Dalmore 15. What does everybody else think?
I thought it was funny that Jordan, I think you said it was your favorite. It's the least favorite for me of the night so far. Now, but I'm always about tasting whiskeys at other times, because it could be that the other whiskeys are interfering with this one or something I ate earlier today. But it has a funk that is different from the rest of your line that I've tasted so far. So
Kate, I think I agree with you. I think it's because we went from 46.5 proof down to the 40 right after.
Yeah.
And I think the progression played with our palates a little.
Yeah, but I kind of did a little rinse for that. You know what I mean? Anyway, we'll see.
I think I'm picking up on Kate what you're picking up, and I think Mike, you mentioned it, is like there's that coffee now. It's very sort of divergent, I think, from the rest of the lineup, which actually I kind of like and I'm very impressed by. Usually, like, you'll see, either Scotch or bourbon where it says 12 and then the other one says 15. They're very like similar, and these are like all so different. I'm actually like really surprised and impressed with them all. So
interesting you should say that. We preach all the time that it wasn't long ago that a 12-year was a young 15, was a young 18, was a young 25, and 25 years in a cask changes a whiskey from 12 years significantly. But I feel like when Richard started this, he really wanted to show off to the world. The gentleman is knighted, is the Dalmore, third generation distiller, and still has a chip on his shoulder that he has something to prove by saying, I can do different single malts all the time. And I hope it continues to bring him high levels of success, because it's done well for him so far. So the 15. Next, we're going to go into something that
One quick thing about the 15. The 15 has historically been my favorite, and I had a bottle on my shelf pretty much always. Got one as a gift. Love the 15. Fair warning for anyone who's going to pick up a bottle. Once you get to about half, you're on a clock. You got to finish it, because I recently pulled out a bottle of the 15 that I've had in my collection for a few years now, and it was at about a third of it. And I tasted that 15 versus what we're tasting today, and it's night and day. It's gone completely flat.
Fell out.
Fell off a cliff. That's it.
How long
Yeah,
would you
and
say it was? How long would you say it was on the shelf?
Ooh, I've had that one for probably 5 years.
Hmm.
I don't know when it got to the below halfway mark, but I've had it I've had it open for quite a few years. And then I had another 15 that's about at that same level from our last tasting. So that one's been on the shelf for 2 years, and 3 of those side by side with what we're tasting tonight, noticeable difference between all 3. So like the 2-year-old is a little flat, the 5-year-old is completely like, it's not enjoyable, and the one today is just bringing me back to why I loved it and it was my favorite. It's
15.
just so good. Yeah. It's just something to keep in mind.
Definitely wasn't engineered to be obsolete. However, I'm sure in about 15 or 20 years in whiskey, they will be making whiskey that's only good for about 45 minutes after you open it. Right? That's definitely, don't put it past us.
Here's my secrets to keep stuff, because I have too much open, is argon and parafilm. If you don't know about parafilm.
Argon sinks to the bottom and just pushes all the air out, right? Pushes all like the oxygen out, right?
Yeah, and then this is a laboratory tape, no air, no in and out. I'm a nerd like
I love that. Good.
I'm a
good
nerd
job.
like
That's super
that.
cool.
Does it work? Have you found it works?
I just got them probably about a year ago, and I don't always use them because I'm lazy, but I do have them.
So having them makes the whiskey taste better. Just having them on the shelf.
It's just having it. Yeah.
It's more like when I open up a Pappy Van Winkle, then I put the tape back on and put the argon in, because I don't that kind of thing.
It's Vadim, it's street cred. If you don't have it, you don't got the street cred, dude.
It's like getting a gym membership. As long as I have
And
a membership.
parafilm used to be $20 for the roll. Now it's 45. It's really gone up in value. It's
Really?
better investment than bourbon. I'm telling you.
Oh, well, I'm 200 feet here, so good for love that.
I don't know. I'm conducting a study, and I'll see if it makes a difference.
All right.
Well,
Yeah.
cool.
So 15, buy it.
15,
drink
15,
it.
buy it, drink it as fast as you can.
Buy it
Right.
again.
And then as soon as you drink it as fast as you can, send text messages to your ex. Always a good idea to drink whiskey fast and send text messages to your ex.
Well, I mean, then you're buying another one. So
yeah,
it's good for
then you got to
everyone.
make up for it. Yeah, and everyone's going to be great.
I would say
So-
buy it and share it and enjoy it. Don't
then-
squirrel it away.
Then send messages to their exes. That'll be even more fun. All right, I'm done. I'm done with my stand-up routine. So let's move on. It's something that I think has changed a lot in its lifetime of being its existence is the Dalmore Cigar Malt Reserve. Originally, we got rid of the Cigar Malt Reserve when we were worried about being associated with the negative connotation of smoking. So we turned it into something called the Grand Reserva. Now, apparently, in Inverness, or north of Inverness at the time, they didn't know that a Grand Reserva is probably a really good rum, but didn't really take off under the name Grand Reserva, went away, and then came back proudly again and is here today as the Cigar Malt Reserve. Originally designed and made by Richard to be able to enjoy while having a cigar. Not everybody smokes cigars. I personally don't. I don't have cigar energy. I'm too high strung. I'm more of a cigarette energy, whereas cigar energy is kind of lean back. I'm more of standing beside an ashtray in the freezing cold and the rain, finishing my cigarette off. So being able to sit down and enjoy something with a cigar is not what I do. But the way I kind of talk about the Cigar Malt Reserve is think of it not a cigar pairing, but think of this single malt as prevalent at the end of your meal. It's as present there as it is at the beginning of the meal. And the way that we do that with relatively big flavors in this is 15 years in ex-bourbon, 50% goes into the 30-year-old cask, 15% gets finished in Chateau Marbouzet, Left Bank Grand Cru Cab, brought back together. The nose to me on this one, big pancakes and maple syrup. The palate comes in a little bit of red berries and tannins with some soft cinnamon. But again, it doesn't have to be with cigar. When I talked about earlier about us going out and we might have a couple whiskeys and a couple glasses of wine, a couple, champagnes, and I come home, it's not the King Alexander I'm going for. It's usually a Seagal Malt Reserve I'm trying to finish my night with. This is going to be there and present after I've had a couple espressos, after maybe I've had a California Cabernet or a Pinot. To me, this is our single malt that can withstand your palate being beaten up with lamb with any other big meals.
I like that. Let's see. There's a consistent, backbone to every sip, but yet every sip has something different in it to me. I've had the cigar malt before and I really enjoy it. I'm definitely not a smoker of any sort. So yeah, this is a good one. I love it.
I was a cigarette smoker. I don't know if I've mentioned this before tonight, and I'm missing it.
How's that quitting going, huh?
So I got married in December. I got married in late December, and my now wife was just like, "Hey, you want to quit smoking?" And I was like, "Nah, I don't at all. In fact, I never want to. I don't even want to quit smoking in the day." She's like, "Well, will you quit for me?" And I said, "Yes." So it's been easy until I do virtual whiskey tasting societies, and I'm sitting here like I am 300 miles away from my wife and drinking whiskey. If I'm going to go downstairs and buy a whole entire pack of cigarettes to have one, what's one going to do? Like, well, what's one going to do? But I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
As a former smoker myself, I can tell you what one's going to do is it's going to turn into 20.
Yeah, it's going to turn into a real fast pack.
I think the answer is easy, Mike. Just drink more whiskey.
Yeah, that'll do it. Right? Make sure I keep those inhibitions really high up there with more whiskey. And I definitely won't be like this. All right, I'll trade you my shoe for a cigarette.
If you pass out, you can't drink. You can't smoke.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. I wish they could do like the burglar latch on the outside of my hotel door. So that's like, you're definitely not smoking.
We're your non-smoking support group. We got you. Just get drunk. You're good.
I love it. All 20 of you, we're going to hop on 5 times a week when I need it. And we're all going to talk me through not smoking.
That's
but
it.
I used to say this too.
Is this W front desk?
Yeah.
Room 1510. I need you to lock that door now.
Bolt them in.
I don't think this is a good group for you. I think
you guys are supportive in the best possible way, though. I love it.
We're offering pretty bad advice. Don't want to smoke? Drink a lot more.
Yeah, drink more. Well, be careful of the unsolicited advice, I always say, but thank you all. I really appreciate you being on my side. But with the cigar malt, I think that little bit of time with the Cabernet really brings out some of those red wine flavors that also go with a lot of the dessert wine flavors. And with this one, none of the vanilla, but a lot of the soft cinnamon from those ex-bourbon casks. Really is a special single malt. I feel like this is the one that isn't in the price point that makes the 15 so approachable. It's not an age statement like my 18, or it doesn't have the fanfare of the King Alexander, which both are above that. It's kind of sat in that middle area that to me means that you're probably always going to be able to find this at your independent retailer, right? We know, and we probably all know people who 18 is where whiskey belong or begins with them. And we also know people who probably have the shortest arms in the world with the deepest pockets. So at 12 years, probably where they're going to try and enjoy themselves as much as they possibly can. But then there's people who just drink what they like. And on either sides of those, maybe you like 18s because that's what you like, or you just like 12s. But to me, the cigar malt is that secret, hidden, really cool whiskey that we make that's getting up into that special category and is kind of graduating from what we kind of call the beginning part of our principal collection. I really like the cigar malt. I always promote the cigar malt. And when I'm in Las Vegas, this is what I'm drinking almost exclusively is a cigar malt. I love it. What does anyone else think? What do you think, Vadim? Like we've asked you about every other one, so I'm going to ask you on this one.
You can tell it's the same distillery, but it's different from the others. I'm getting more like sour plums on this one. And I'm enjoying it a lot. It hasn't been a bad one yet.
Who here likes the 15-year more than the cigar malt? Who here likes the cigar malt more than the 15? I'm guessing it's most people in here, right? This is definitely the most personality of the single malts that I believe that we're trying today. I see that both are similar. You're right. Both aren't far, right? Both are going to spend close to the same amount of time in ex-bourbon, a few more years on the cigar malt. Both are going to see about the same amount of time in the 30-year-old sherry cask. And then all of a sudden they split where that little bit of time, that 15% that goes into the red wine. And I think that that's kind of where this one, this one is the twin that has the mohawk. Definitely different, very similar, but definitely different. And then we'll get to what I would think is the top of our house style, the Dalmore 18. I'm actually going to give my glass a little rinse here before we get the 18. The 18 is more expensive. The 18 right now, I saw a little comment there. The 18 recently just went up 51%. We are definitely, like just about every other single malt distillery in the world, really having a hard time producing enough 18-year-old to quench the world's thirst. And in an attempt to make the 18 what we think, so we'll start this way. I've been sold out of 18 for 75% of last year. I couldn't get 18 to for those of you in California, Mission Wine and Spirits couldn't get enough 18. Wing Hop Fung couldn't get enough 18. High Times, they couldn't get enough 18. These fantastic independent retailers, Total Wine was not able to get enough 18. And we sat here and we thought, well, if it's that important for people to have it, it should be that important to have it at a 51% increase. And I know that's not going to make a lot of friends. I think that we've been a little underpriced, not for what whiskey should cost. So don't throw tomatoes at me. But for the reality of what single malt actually costs right now in the marketplace, I feel like our 18 has been slightly underpriced.
We couldn't have this call 3 months ago, just to give us a heads up. Thanks a lot, Vadim. Nice job.
You still have time. There's still time. Go clean out Mission. That said, as you pour the last dram into your glass, please hop on camera and join us as we raise a glass to Mike, the Dalmore, and the group here. Thank you all for being here tonight. This has been absolutely fantastic. We're not done yet, but as always, cheers to you. Thanks for being here. There we go. Almost everyone. We're going to have 100%. Carrie's going to, everybody think Carrie. Come on, Carrie. Get on camera, Carrie. Freaking Carrie. All right. Cheers, everyone. Raise a glass. Smile to the camera. Cheers. Got it. And we got Carrie. Perfect.
So the 18, 14 years in ex-bourbon. And then this is where we really start seeing first fill 30-year-old Methuselah Oloroso sherry use. So these come up wet on a boat. The distillery enjoys themselves with some 30-year-old sherry, and then we pour our whiskey into these big sherry butts. And after 4 years, we bring it back out. The 18 is, from what I've been hearing a lot lately with people who haven't been drinking the Dalmore as much as I'm trying to enter into newer markets, is they would have thought from the 15 to the 18 that the 18 would have been this big, overbearing 18-year-old single malt, whereas everyone is saying the 18 is significantly more drinkable than most of the other single malts. This is a fan favorite at a lot of the restaurants that I like to visit for the bar staff when they're asking for, do you mind if we try some whiskey with you, Mike? I'm like, absolutely. A couple Dalmore 12s. And then they just show up with the bottle of 18. Like, I thought we would try this. And I say, of course you did. Of course, you thought you would try that. Enjoy yourselves. But I do like the 18. Brioche a little bit. A little bit of anise as well I get from the 18. The 18 evaporates. It goes down very easy. Opinions on the 18?
Yeah, so the 18 kind of comes across as muscular.
Mhm.
What's the right word? Anyway, but lean. It's not like, whereas the last one, the cigar, is bold, and in, you know, it's in your face, right? This one is a bit more drinkable in the, you know, casual drinking way, but it's muscular. Yeah.
The way I describe this as most of us will be familiar with the Macallan 18, right? The Macallan and the Dalmore are often talked about in the same breath. The Macallan single cask 18 is in a tuxedo. It's at the bar. It's probably drinking a fantastic martini. The Dalmore 18 is in a tuxedo next to it, but has its elbows out a little bit more, right? Like it might be leaning a little bit more into the bar, whereas the Macallan 18 is a little more upright with its chin in the air. And the Dalmore is probably kind of a little more sloped brow, leaning into the bar and really kind of enjoying the atmosphere a little bit more. That's the way I always think of the Dalmore 18 inside of that 18-year-old luxury single malt category. So if I could sit here and say, I'm probably going to guess yeah, there it is. That's what I was going to ask. And if I have to put my money on it, I'm going to say it's the Portwood or the cigar malt are going to be the top here.
You're ahead of the curve. Usually we vote and then I grill the brand rep to see which one they can guess which one is the favorite. I think the thing with the
Portwood.
With the Portwood and the cigar malt is the price, right?
Mhm.
The 14 and the Portwood, they're both around the $100 mark, where that's such a fantastic single malt for that. And Vadim now is different than Vadim was 5 years ago. So somehow $100 became affordable for a good single malt. But if you're looking at the rest of the portfolio, like comparing it to the 18 and the King Alexander, these are bangers. They're good.
Yeah, and I think again, approachability. Mike now from 5 years ago is also very different. But I really don't think that and nor should you ever listen to a whiskey ambassador's theory on what's approachable and affordable. I mean, Lord, I'd be drinking green tea if it was up to my own budget. I'd be drinking the hot water with lemon at a restaurant. So am lucky that I get to drink these, but I will recognize that when I do go to stores and I see a lot of our competitor sets, I'll try and put myself in the position of what would it be like to grab a bottle. And it would be a tough call to grab the 18. It'd be a tough call to grab my 21. You know, I don't think they're making the 21 for me, but we're making that Portwood for me. That Portwood and that 14 and the 12-year Sherry Cask Select is they're making that for me. So says the guy in a cardigan with a Mellow Corn t-shirt on. I also, by the way, today in Tacoma, I found a bottle of ancient age bourbon, which made me really happy because I haven't seen an ancient age in forever. And I'm literally tasting the liquor store owner. I was like, hold on. I was like, can I buy this? They're like, what are you buying that for? I was like, dude, I don't see ancient age in any store in California. So thank you for having it. So pretty pumped on that one, which goes back to saying like, what are they designing for me to drink? The port would probably be what I'm going to guess I'd buy. And I think that would probably be the winner of the tonight.
It might just be my plastic cup at this Marriott in Connecticut. But there are certain single malts that have, I don't know how to describe it. I see lychee, I see anise. I describe it as a little bit of sort of like the beginning of when you're eating blue cheese, like before it gets real funky before the end, but that beginning note, there's like kind of a beginning of a funk that I get on this that I really, really love. I also love blue cheese. I love a thing, but there's other brands of single malt that have it, and I'm getting it for the first time really heavy on this, and I'm just really enjoying it. in a real way.
I'm going to sit there and say that I heard for the first time. So I like to, every time I do this, I like to remember the one thing someone tells me that I've never heard before. And the beginning part of the blue cheese is the one that's going to stick with me tonight. Can anyone beat that? Anyone want to come at something with more blue cheese to be remember?
No,
I
just,
saw
you know,
that
like, we know when you're eating blue cheese, like there's a beginning note before it turns. There's like that just beginning
Yep.
funk note. That's sweet before it gets like what, which I love too, but that note I really like.
Yeah, the talk.
Jordan, sorry, Jordan, is that the 18 that you're talking about?
I am.
Okay, thanks.
It's funny what you say about blue cheese has a time, right? It's got a time limit. I feel that way about pancakes. I feel like pancakes are something that I want every minute of my life until I order pancakes. And the second bite, I was like this, yeah, I've had enough pancakes. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. It was the exact what I wanted up until that last bite, and I don't want any more. So let's talk about pancakes and maple syrup, everybody. Hey, Vadim, what's the number one that we have so far?
All right, everybody's voted, and our number one pick of the night is cigar malt. 45%. 10 people voted for cigar malt.
14,
and in second place is the 14, which is what I would have voted for if I had the opportunity to vote. I thought the 14 was ridiculously good.
Yeah, I voted for the 14. That was, but it was a tie, almost a tie with the cigar. That was maybe secondary.
So first place
Cool.
cigar malt, second place 14, and then third place 18 year. All right.
Well, nice. Well,
So grab the 18
distiller
now for 300 before it becomes 400.
I just want to point out that I might have voted for the king, except it was so long ago, I don't remember what it tastes like anymore.
Revisit. But I do appreciate having to try. Like, that's one of the things that we've discussed at tastings before, that brand, like you were saying, brands usually will start with the lowest and go to the highest. And so by then your palate's shot, you're already tipsy, and you're like, this is amazing. So then you go out and buy a $300 bottle and you're like, oh, that wasn't as great as I remember it to be. Here, you started with it on a clean head. You're like, okay, the people who love that one actually love it. They know it's really good. There's no question about it.
If it wasn't everybody's favorite, great. I would fear that it would be someone's favorite after they tried 3 whiskeys, right? Because then when you go buy that whiskey and you hate it, then I'm the jerk that talked you into buying a super expensive bottle that they had to unlock the glass for, right? So if people here enjoy that cigar malt, that you generally, it really depends on where you're shopping, but you're generally on the floor. It's not behind the counter. It's not behind glass. That 14, if it's in stock, buy it. I remember I was in Scotland when we released it on a trip, and I called Remedy and Mission, and I told them to buy 300 cases each. And then it got to the point where California only got 300 cases. So I had to walk into Mission and Remedy and be like, sorry, guys, you guys can have 25 cases. Sorry, I told you to buy so many, but I thought we were going to get more. But yeah.
But hey, to be fair, if you get the king and you don't love it, Mike was saying, just make highballs. You're good.
Yeah, it's real easy. Like Canada Dry soda water works really well, right? Or 7-Up, right? Who was I talking about drinking whiskey with 7-Up? And they showed me a clip from YouTube where somebody was drinking. It was a bourbon producer, a really well-known bourbon producer who insists on drinking his bourbon with 7-Up. And they're like, stop judging people. And I was like, guy, I live in LA. All I do is judge people. That's what we're supposed to do.
Don't forget, Mountain Dew was created to be a mixer with bourbon. It's disgusting, but that's what it's created for. Mountain Dew with Evan Williams powder involved is not good.
Renee asked, what is a highball? A highball traditionally is a blended whiskey, also can be a single malt, but traditionally was a blended whiskey with soda water with ice in a Collins glass, right? A Collins glass being the tall, straight glass, usually with a citrus expression. So a lemon peel, a grapefruit peel is very popular right now, or an orange peel. Highballs are a really awesome classic way to enjoy your single malt without just drinking whiskey. Sometimes it's nice to throw some bubbles in there and surprise your palate every now and again, I say. Well, cool.
So,
if anybody has any comments, questions, I'm here for it.
I know we talked a little bit, well, actually quite a bit about the sherry cask. We unfortunately didn't have one to taste. Could you review again, how it compares to some of the others?
So the 12-year Sherry Cask Select, so the 12-year, where would I say that compares? I would say, let's just put it to the other 12, right? And as the other 12 is a little more soft and subtle, my 12-year Sherry Cask Select is a little more vibrant and sherry. It's bright and sherry forward. We really created this 12-year to answer, I feel like, the question that was posed by the end result of the poll we had today. Not a single person chose 12-year. And we believe that we are capable of making a 12-year that could stand up to our 15 or 14, our cigar malt. We just have to finish it in a different way. And that's what the 12-year Sherry Cask Select is. So I feel like if you find it and you try it, it's going to be in a lighter purple, like more of like a royal blue / purple label. It's going to be in between our 12-year and our 18-year-old color. It says 12 on it, but underneath says Sherry Cask Select. You're probably going to guarantee you're not going to be disappointed, because it is that slightly higher proof, slightly more bold, bright sherry.
Thank you.
So we also are releasing again this year a small handful of 30-year-olds, which are very special to us. 30s are finished in a Colheita vintage sherry cask. Our 40-year-old, a very limited supply. And again, we are able to release a 45 this year. We're one of the few distilleries that's consistently releasing a 45-year-old single malt every year. And if you're super lucky, there's 150 of what we call our cask curation series coming out in late Q4. It's a 3-bottle set. I do believe it's a 23-year-old, a 26-year-old, and a 43-year-old, all finished in beautiful different sherry that we've had, all age statements we've never released before. And these are probably going to be priceless at that point, as there's only about 150 going to be released in the world.
Too rich for my blood.
Too rich for everybody I've talked to so far in the last 3 months, blood as well. So you're not alone. Yeah, from the number of cities I cover and the number of states I cover, you are in the 100% majority of what everyone else is saying as well.
Hey, Mike, when you were talking about the cask strength and private kind of clients and things like that, and you said selecting a barrel and that kind of stuff. So is that like a single barrel program that's available that you kind of can taste different barrels and then say, okay, that's the one I want, bottle at cask strength, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so generally the way this usually will go is we'll introduce you to our private client team, which is based out of the UK. And we'll have a number of meetings and dinners to try and figure out what you like, right? Like, it's pretty hard to just, it's your call. If you walk in, you're like, I just want a 17-year-old finished in bourbon, we can find that for you. But instead, what we'll have is a great level of questions and interaction that our private client team does with you to see what you like. What are your interests besides whiskey? What are you usually drinking this with? When are you drinking it? What else do you like to drink? What other single malts or wines do you like to drink? And then we'll kind of sit there and bring a handful of whiskeys we think that you've described. And then when you pick 3 that you'd like to go try eventually, it's very fun. Who knows how you make your way to the distillery? It really depends on what age statement you're asking for. If you're looking for something in the 50 years, we might fly you out there. We're definitely going to fly you out there. We're probably going to helicopter you up to the distillery. You'll show up, and in front of the distillery, there'll be the 3 casks waiting for you in front of, right in front of the Mackenzie Stone. Which is the original Mackenzie, who were the founders of the Dalmore, their family stones out there. Then you'll meet Richard, and you'll go in with our private client team, and you'll have a fantastic dinner prepared for you. And then we'll start talking about bottles and how you want it packaged and what you'd like it looked like. And it's a real bespoke experience, something that we try not to do it like, say, Moet Hennessy does. Very good friend of mine is the Moet Hennessy private client, and they have one of the top tiered private client experiences. Being able to go to Cognac, or being able to go close down the Louis Vuitton store in Paris for an hour to shop is definitely something that we can't quite do. But to make up for the fact that we aren't Moet Hennessy, we make ours extremely bespoke. The bottle is the way you chose it. The label is what you want it to look like. For instance, we had a gentleman who loves 3 Cohibas. He only smokes 3 different types of Cohibas. So we created these packaging that look like the Cohiba packaging for him. And he was like, that's all I want every time when I'm ordering my whiskey from you. Yeah,
Nice.
it's kind of fun. It's kind of exciting. Definitely not something that I experience on a daily basis, but our private client team is stunning, and they're really good at what they do. And it's small. It's about 4 or 5 people work in our private client team, and that's it. And they live and breathe. I am a caveman. I'm not creative at anything, so that would not be good for me. I'd be like, don't you want some whiskey? Use a cask. But these are definitely different types of people who I envy. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, it sounds very bespoke. I've done some single barrel picks, but it's not quite that high end. It's more of the distillery will send us like a group of us, different samples from different barrels, and we'll pick one, we'll proof it, and then say that's the one we want, kind of thing.
We've done 2 private casts in America so far. Most of them have been in Europe and Asia, but the 2 private casts we've done were both 30 years, and each of them were $1.5 million. And then the gentleman chose, the second option was a $500 million for us to age it for 5 more years. And he did it back to back. He did one year and then went and bought the same exact 30 year the next year. And we're like, oh, we don't want to know where it's going, but we hope you're enjoying it. don't know what you're doing with 140 bottles of this 30 year, but good luck. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
30-year-old whiskey is not easy to drink,
Right.
right? It's starting to get to a thing where your body is really kind of working overtime to drink a 30-year-old whiskey.
I volunteer as tribute to work overtime on 30-year-old whiskey. My body volunteers. Use my body
to work on it. Yeah. Well,
Sounds
are you
terrible.
if anyone's coming, so this year we will be sampling at the High Rollers tickets for the Great Whiskey Fest that Mahesh is putting on in Las Vegas. We will be featuring possibly some of the cask curation whiskey for the top tier people that are getting in. By the way, sir, they wouldn't let me in the door, and I work for the darn company. They wouldn't let me in the door of the top tier ones last year. After I walked Richard to the door, they're like, thank you, sir. And then a large man with thick wrists put his hand up and stopped me from walking through that door. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to go.
I told you not to wear your mellow corn shirt to that event. I told you.
My mellow corn sequin suit didn't get me through the door that year, so. But if anyone's there this year, I'll be there for the last 3 nights. We'll be bopping around, myself and Craig Bridger, who is our national head of advocacy, and last year receiver of now a keeper of the Quake. So a big story, big cool thing that Craig has the keeper of the Quake. I keep telling him to wear his medals out, and he's worried that he's going to get confronted by as a fake veteran. I was like, I don't think anybody's going to do that to you. Be proud that you're a keeper of the Quake, my friend. It's pretty cool. Richard actually put the pin on him. And then as Craig described it, they went to a local bar and closed down the bar doing Dalmore 18s with Heineken backs. I was like, don't you mean Heinekens with whiskey backs? He was like, no, it was Dalmore 18s with Heineken backs. I was like, oh, you were chasing Dalmore 18 with Heineken. That's a very Richard way to go about your life. You're doing it wrong, Richard. It's supposed to be a beer and a shot, not a whiskey and a shot of beer. Well, everybody, thank you. It's Thursday.
I can't believe you said that Richard's doing something wrong. That's just.
Yeah. Well, he's doing something wrong because I absolutely don't want to wake up in an Inverness holding cell being like, I don't know, guys, I was chasing whiskey with beer with this beautiful, awesomely clothed gentleman. And everyone's like, yeah, sure you were with Richard. Right? Like, sure you were with him. So that's not my idea of a good time in the Northern Highlands.
for sure. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much. Any last questions, or we're gonna let Mike enjoy the rest of his evening? All right. Well, thank you all so much. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you for listening and sitting here with me. Right, I know that everyone's time is very valuable, and that it's really cool to have everybody here to be able to enjoy the Dalmore. Right, everyone who did it with with me, hopefully we'll be able to do another one a little bit later in the year, and I'll try and find some other ways to send you some cool stuff. Maybe I'll talk to Vadim and we'll send you some of the sherry, and we'll send you some of the port and the red wine we do, and then we can revisit some of these Dalmores with a sherry component that's with them.
I think
so
we got to set up a tasting, like an in-person dinner. I think that's you shine great in person, so I think that we got to do that. With then we can do the sherry, because sherry oxidizes, right? So that's one of the reasons I can't do samples of sherry. So
it does relatively quickly as well. Yeah.
So that's the reason we don't. The Virtual Tasting Society doesn't do wine tastings, because I can't get it out to people in time. So
we'll set one up, right? I'm located in Southern California, but that doesn't mean that we can't travel, right? Like we can hit Las Vegas, we can hit Northern California or Washington, Glendale. I finally, when I got married, I moved to the suburbs, which was funny because I moved one block out of Los Angeles into Glendale, and now I'm like so happy I live in the suburbs. You should see me when people talk about LA now. I'm like, LA, like you want to go into the city? It's a block away. It's 1 block away from my house in Los Angeles. Jane, we're in Glendale together. I do love Glendale. I would suggest, if you're in Glendale or you're the neighbor to Glendale, one of my favorite places to shop in Glendale is called Butcher and Booze. It's right on Central. It's a Wagyu butcher shop and bottle shop. They carry a bunch of really cool champagnes, wines, beers, and an extensive Wagyu butcher shop. So if you ever want to get your A5 and enjoy some, they do have a Dalmore 30 year. They have one of my 15 Dalmore 30s. So
there you go.
No, cool. Everybody enjoy your Thursday night. I am going to go to bed because the sun is not shining up here, and I am soft Southern California guy who needs his sun and warm weather. I have a winter coat and a hat and a scarf and a cardigan on and pants up here, but everyone makes fun of my shoes because I'm wearing white sneakers. Apparently that's not a big thing in the Pacific Northwest.
Apparently it hailed yesterday in LA while I was gone, so.
Oof.
Grapple was not hail. I saw the videos. It's not hail.
from Minnesota, right?
The Minnesotan knows.
Yeah, right.
Trust me, Jason, for LA, it was hail and snow.
So it was 6 feet. It's in a blizzard condition. It was a whiteout.
I had snow here in Altadena. It was sort of in the air. It really didn't even land. That's how little it was. But yeah,
I had to look up the word grapple. Yes.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. Again, they better lower my rent. I did not relocate to Southern California to deal with non-hail, or whatever phrase we're using right now. That's not why I'm there. I'm there for a lot more. My heat's been on for 3 months straight. What the heck?
It's just all about the whole place.
Well, everybody, I hope everybody has a great Thursday night.
Sounds good, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye,
Mike.
Have a safe trip.
Thanks a lot.